Hey there, and welcome. Today, we're going to do something a little different. We're taking a virtual trip to a grocery store in Montreal. We're going to learn some really essential French vocabulary, but not by just memorizing boring lists. Nope, we're going to follow a story. And by the end of this, I promise you'll be ready to tackle your own shopping list Quebec style. So, here's our roadmap for today. We're going to follow our main character, Mark, as he goes about his shopping trip. Every stop he makes is a new chance for us to pick up some words in a real, natural context, from planning the meal all the way to the final purchase. Trust me, this is how you make new vocabulary actually stick. All right, let's dive right in. Our story starts in Montreal on a Saturday morning with our guy, Mark. He's about to plan a big meal, and right away we hit our first important Quebec French term. A big dinner is called a souper. Okay. Hold on. Before we go any further, this is crucial. You absolutely have to know this difference. As you can see, the names for meals are different in Quebec versus France. On the left, in Quebec, breakfast is le déjeuner, lunch is le dîner, and dinner is le souper. But look at the right. In France, le déjeuner is lunch and le dîner is dinner. It can be pretty confusing. For our story, we are 100% using the Quebec terms. Context is everything in language, right? So our story begins. Mark started his day with a hearty breakfast. So in Quebec, that first meal of the day is le déjeuner. Got it? He looked at his nearly empty pantry, that's his garde-manger, and realized he needed to prepare for a big dinner, which we just learned is le souper. See? Simple when you see it in a sentence. So what does Mark do next? Well, he opened the weekly flyer to see which items were on sale. Now that flyer, that's called a circulaire. And here is a fantastic little tip for you. In Quebec, you're going to see 3 really common ways to say something is on sale. En promotion, en spécial, and en solde. They're all used pretty much interchangeably, so it's a good idea to know all 3. And here's how the first chapter wraps up. He quickly wrote a grocery list, grabbed his basket, and headed out. Okay, 2 absolutely non-negotiable words here. Your shopping plan, that's your liste d'épicerie, your grocery list, and the basket you carry your stuff in, that's your panier. You literally can't go shopping without them. Okay, Mark is officially out the door. Now, his first stops aren't the giant supermarket. He's starting with some smaller specialty shops. Let's see where he's headed first. The story tells us his first stop was the bakery and pastry shop for fresh bread. Next, he visited the butcher shop. So this introduces our first category of words, places and shops, or commerces in French. A boulangerie et pâtisserie is where you get all that amazing fresh bread and pastries. And the butcher shop is a boucherie. Pretty straightforward, right? So what's he getting at the boucherie? Well, his list calls for bœuf haché maigre, which is lean ground beef, and cuisses de poulet, those are chicken thighs. Then something catches his eye, some brochettes de poulet et de porc. That's chicken and pork skewers. And hey, notice that LB for pounds? In French, a pound is a livre. Of course, you can't buy anything if you don't know the price. The story says, Mark asked the butcher, how much? This is a phrase you will use constantly. You can just say, combien? Or you can say, c'est combien? Both mean how much is it, and they're both perfectly natural. And what does the butcher say back? $5 each. Now, listen up, because this is a golden nugget of Quebec slang. Instead of dollars, you will very often hear people say piastres, and sometimes it sounds more like piastres. So, 5 piastres is $5. The word for each is chacun. Seriously, use the word piastres, and you will sound like a local. It's fantastic. All right, bread and meat are secured. Now Mark is heading into the main grocery store. And let me tell you, this is where we are going to pick up a ton of new vocabulary, so I hope you're ready. So the story says, Mark then entered the large grocery store. Let's add that to our growing list of shops. The grocery store itself is an épicerie. And often, inside the épicerie, you'll find a dedicated fish counter, which is called the poissonnerie. And we're headed there in just a bit. Okay, the story continues. He walked down the first aisle. By the way, an aisle is a rangée or an allée, to find baking supplies like farine, that's flour, and beurre, butter. Then, in the dairy section, he grabs some fromage, cheese, and some things with key quantity words. Une bouteille of lait, a bottle of milk, une douzaine d'œufs, a dozen eggs, and une boîte de haricots rouges, a can of kidney beans. You see how important those little quantity words are? They help you say exactly what you need. Now it's time for seafood. At the fish market counter within the fish and seafood section, he selected a fresh salmon fillet and a half-pound of shrimp. So that whole section is poisson et fruits de mer. He gets a filet de saumon and some crevettes, which are shrimp. And this is a perfect example of how measurements work. He asks for une demi-livre. That's a half-pound. The price is often listed by la livre, the pound. And for something like spinach, which he gets later, he'll grab 2 paquets or packs. Next up, he moves to the produce section to get his légumes, his vegetables. And wow, the list is pretty long here. From onions and carrots to concombre, a very common sign you might see in this section is something like 3 pour $5. That just means 3 for $5. And he also makes sure to grab some épinards, which is spinach. Okay, time for the fruit. Mark fills up un sac, that's a bag, with things like pomme, apples, and raisin, grapes. But for the bleuets, the blueberries, he gets un casseau. You know that little pint container they come in? That's a casseau. And you can see the whole list right there, from ananas all the way to avocat. Mark's basket is almost full. I mean, it is packed, but he's not done yet. Let's follow him through the last couple of aisles of the store, and for one final and very important stop. Before leaving, Mark stopped in the health and beauty section for toothpaste and picked up some cleaning products. Okay, so that health and beauty section is called Hygiène et Beauté, and that's where he gets dentifrice, which is toothpaste. Cleaning products are called produits d'entretien. He also grabs some crème or cream, and this is just a great reminder that Canada uses the metric system. So you're going to see units like grams, kilograms, milliliters, and liters on everything. So Mark is on his way home to make le dîner. And remember, that's lunch in Quebec. When he has that oh no moment, he forgot drinks. He stopped at the local convenience store. And folks, this is another one of those essential, must-know Quebec words, dépanneur. A dip-in, as everyone calls it, is your neighborhood corner store. It's a true cultural institution. So what kind of stuff do you find at the Dépanneur? Well, Mark sees a caisse de bière, a case of beer, and grabs some sel, salt. Then he can't resist some classic snacks, croustilles, chips, bonbons, candy, and gum. And, of course, you'll see magazines, newspapers, and lotto tickets. Finally, as he heads for the door, he makes a crucial decision for tonight's big meal, pas de chocolat, no chocolate. And with that, Mark's shopping trip is finally complete. And our vocabulary list? Well, it's huge. So let's take a second to recap the absolute essentials. You know, the key to remembering all this is to think in categories. We covered the places, like the Boucherie and that all-important Dépanneur. We learned measurements, like une livre and une douzaine. We saw all kinds of delicious food, from bœuf haché to bleuette. And most importantly, we finally cleared up the Quebec meal names, Déjeuner, Dîner, and souper. This slide right here, this is your basic toolkit for any shopping trip in Quebec. We have built such a fantastic vocabulary list today, and we did it all just by following the story of one single meal. It just goes to show you how much language you can absorb from a simple, everyday task. So I'll leave you with this question. Now that you have the words, what's on your list d'épicerie? Thanks so much for joining me today.